Hello everybody, welcome. I'm No02, and I believe that these are the top 15 cards for No Hope mode. These cards are obviously really good in the other modes as well, but I think these cards are essential in No Hope mode. I believe that these cards are so powerful and so good that all 15 of these cards should be distributed amongst your team composition in some way or another. In fact, some of these cards are so good that I think all 4 players on your team should be running copies of some of these cards. Be sure to check the timestamps. I'll be timestamping every single card in this deck to denote where its discussion begins. You can look at the card that you're most interested in. Maybe some of these cards you would never think to be on a list like this. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe it's a hot take. I don't know. But I'm confident that these cards are either so powerful individually in what they do that they can't be ignored, or some of these cards are like the critical foundation for certain wombo combos, particularly the support cards. When we'll get to them when we get there. Let's start from the very top, and maybe this is the hot take here, but I will say with confidence. No02 will say with confidence. I believe that Pinata is the best card that came out of Tunnels of Terror, and Pinata I think might be the best card in the game. Like Pinata, double grenade pouch. It's just like those are like incredible cards, but Pinata I think might be the best card in the game right now. The amount of resources that Pinata will generate every single mission over and over and over again, so long as you have a couple of grenades or Molotovs or any throwable at all, is I think insane. Insane. So 15% chance to get an accessory when you blow up a Ridden with an accessory. Keep in mind, this also triggers off of Razor Wire, but there's a lot of build-up in order to get Razor Wire strong enough to shred Ridden apart, right? But 15%, that may not seem like a lot, but it's per Ridden, and that's really important. This is about quantity over quality here, right? Think about the circumstances in which you feel the need to throw something. You're throwing a Molotov? When are you throwing a Molotov? Probably during a Horde event. Pipe Bomb? Probably during a Horde event. Throwing a grenade? You can probably get a mutation, but when the mutations become dangerous, when if you're out in the open, mutations are only dangerous if there's a lot of zombies running around and you need to blow yourself up to clear a path and things like that. For the most part, though, you'll end up finding that when you're throwing an accessory, there tends to be a lot of zombies around. That's sort of the point I'm getting at here. And it's per Ridden. So if during a Horde event you throw a single Molotov and it burns 20 zombies, that's 20 rolls of the dice, where 15% chance has a opportunity to trigger. In fact, I mean, Horde events have so many zombies in them that I tend to find that you could read Pinata. If you throw something during a Horde event, you'll get something back. If you throw a Molotov and burn 20 zombies, chances are you'll get at least one thing back. And that's been my experience with Pinata over and over and over and over again. You generate so many resources, toolkits, defibs, extra grenades, medkits, everything. Literally all the accessories can spawn out of it. And especially in solo No Hope mode, Pinata is a huge clutch. I think Pinata is a must include in all 4 players' decks. All 4 players' decks, I think, should include Pinata. The only exception would be like if one of your players is going to be a designated flashbang player and he's going to be set up to fight the bosses and things like that. Otherwise, he most likely won't be blowing a lot of things up with his flashbang, so he won't need Pinata. Otherwise, though, everyone else, Molotovs, grenades, pipe bombs, you should have Pinata, because it's just such a reliable source of additional resources in a game mode that's not going to give you anything extra. Next is Offensive Scavenger. I'm cheating a little bit here with top 15 because Offensive Scavenger is going to be sort of a placeholder here for Support Scavenger as well. Not the biggest fan of Utility Scavenger. Honestly, Pinata is just as good as Pinata. It has a chance to generate Utility Scavenger, right? And with Secret Passage now being a thing, Utility Scavenger I think has sort of fallen off. But Offensive Scavenger and Support Scavenger I think are pretty much must-includes in all of the team compositions. You can probably get away with one of them. People say that these cards stack together, so feel free to play around with that concept. But if I had to choose between Offensive Scavenger and Support Scavenger, I would choose Offensive Scavenger because the best defense is a good offense. You don't need to heal yourself if you've blown everything up, and that's sort of the idea that I've adopted here. Especially if you're gonna have Pinata on all 4 decks, you definitely want as much opportunity, as many resources as possible to trigger Pinata. But just in general, having any extra amount of resources, whether it's throwables or healables, pretty much must include in your team composition. Super reliable and consistent for the most part, even if it's 1 or 2. Those are huge boons for your team to continue making progress and keep your grenade economy going throughout the mission. Next is double grenade pouch. Again, accessories and throwables are so powerful. If we look back to the time where people were grenade duping, you couldn't lose because you could never die because you can constantly just blow things up with grenades. Funny enough, there was just cards in the game already that gave you the ability to do that without cheating, and they're still here. The offensive scavenger, double grenade pouch, the ability to buy grenades from the store. Like, we don't, and now with Pinata and other grenade generating cards, like having access to lots and lots of grenades is super possible now. And with, I believe, with offensive scavenger being a must include in every single team composition, double grenade pouch will not only give your teammates enough resources for the most part to get through an entire mission all on your own, even if you don't necessarily get that many grenades. But in addition to that, if maybe you throw all 3 of your grenades and then you come across a Molotov, you'll pick it up because you wouldn't leave it behind. And then maybe you come across another Molotov, and Pinata triggers a Molotov spawn, and double grenade pouch will pretty much guarantee that you'll either have enough resources, that will guarantee you'll have enough resources to get through the mission, coupled with your resource generation cards. In addition to that, it'll help make sure that you don't leave anything behind. You're going to have tons of slots to carry tons of items. And double grenade pouch, I think, is super solid. Bomb Squad. This is a team effect now. Bomb Squad used to be a solo individual card. In a way, Bomb Squad was sort of nerfed in that it gives less damage overall. And typically we're using Bomb Squad to make our grenades do enough damage that we can melt bosses with 3 or 4 grenades. Now that it's been changed, though, some interesting things happen here. It'll take 4 cards of Bomb Squad to stack up to your 100% explosive damage, which is what Bomb Squad used to do in the past. But interestingly enough, now the explosive resistance of the team effect, if all 4 players are running Bomb Squad, you have 80% explosive resistance. 80. Friendly fire grenade damage, rather insignificant now. Exploder damage, 80% reduction on exploder damage. I'm not 100% sure if the additional frag grenades stacks as well, because I've always run offensive scavenger with it, so I've never actually tested it. Do know that the team effects stack. People have confirmed that. But the extra grenade damage is just such an important thing when it comes to getting the maximum value out of our grenades. Giving the team significant resistance to explosive damage in the game, huge boon. And the extra frag grenade, even if it's just 1, even if the frag grenade doesn't stack, I think throwables are so important in no hope mode that having just 1 extra reliable grenade spawn somewhere on the map that you're sort of looking for, I think is super important and key to no hope mode. Next, we're going to have 2 economy cards here. Stealthy Passage. In a team composition, the copper gain does stack, but somebody on your team should have a quick slot. So I do think that you shouldn't have all 4 players running Stealthy Passage. At the most, maybe 2. But I think for sure, 100% of the time, somebody on your team should be running Stealthy Passage. There are obviously lots of opportunities for car alarms, birds, and door alarms. And if you think about it, Stealthy Passage has the potential to be better than Share the Wealth. Share the Wealth is a net gain of 400 copper, which is a lot of copper. It's the most copper per 1 card for the most part, especially in no hope mode where Money Grubbers falls off dramatically, unless you have Cost of Avarice, and then it's sort of feast or famine and you're rolling the dice, right? But this is about consistency, reliability. Stealthy Passage is a net gain of 100 copper per alarm. How many alarms are you encountering in each mission? At least 4, right? At least 4-ish? Even if it's 3, you get to you get to dodge a horde and you get 300 copper to the team. But a lot of times you might encounter 5 or 6 alarms. It depends on the mission, but for the most part, I think Stealthy Passage is going to offer you the same economic value that Share the Wealth is, or come very close to it, and it will save you having to fight a couple of hordes. And when it comes to secondary objectives, like the red wire, like the don't trigger an alarm of secondary objectives, Stealthy Patches will pretty much guarantee that you'll have the ability to complete that objective without the need of toolkits. Again, it's just a huge economic card here. It was a huge convenient overall. Stealthy Passage is a must include on at least one player's deck with your no hope team composition. Share the Wealth. All 4 players should be running Share the Wealth 100% of the time. There's no reason not to run this card unless you plan on using 4 burn cards for extra copper every single mission. Because, I mean, Share the Wealth between 4 players is a net gain of 1,600 copper per mission. It's a ton of copper. Super reliable, super consistent. It's going to be and in a no hope mode, copper is king. Copper is king. There's never been such a high demand for copper before in the game. You'll need team upgrades, and as well as all the opportunity to purchase cards now. Having the ability to purchase every single card that you want, that you encounter, will give you the ability to create just a super mega powerful deck. An overpowered deck by the time you get to the finale of your act, because you'll have an extra 5, 6, 7, 8 cards, making your deck just absolutely insane. And Share the Wealth is just solid, reliable, consistent copper. I think every single no hope team should have 4 copies of Share the Wealth in their team composition. Next is On Your Mark. All the other like reload speed and movement, the swap speed and move speed, that's all nice and dandy. What we really care about is the ammo. There's no other card in the game, again, that's going to give your entire team reliable and consistent ammo generation over time. You don't have to loot for it, right? You don't need to run ammo scavenger. You don't need to have ammo belt. You don't need to worry about ammo over time, and that's sort of the huge thing here. I believe that On Your Mark is a card that all 4 players should be running in their deck. 4 copies of it, and every single horde event, you're generating 40 ammo restored to your reserves. And On Your Mark can sort of be cheesed in that if you know you have a horde event coming up, you're coming up on a nest or an alarm door that you know you're going to pop, open up your inventory, click on each of your ammo types a couple of times, dropping it on the ground, guaranteeing that when On Your Mark triggers, you'll get the full value out of the 40%. So for the and if you do that from the start of a mission to the end, you'll have more than enough ammo to just freely shoot anything. Go Rambo, shoot whatever you want, shoot as mag dump as much as you want, regardless of your bullet damage and your bullet value. You'll have more than enough ammo to deal with everything that you'll be encountering in no hope mode, and it'll be happening passively in the background. As you make mistakes, you'll get more ammo, because typically mistakes will cost you more resources. On Your Mark will make sure that you'll never run out of ammo when you're making mistakes that result in hordes. So I think 4 copies of On Your Mark, absolutely guaranteed. Needs of the Many. This is a card that, for the most part, those extra lives. I was a player in Nightmare mode when it came to the extra lives, where I played most of my Nightmare games without ever having a life. Yeah, I'm sure there's a joke there, right? There's a joke there. But now in no hope mode, with there no being extra life given, and Mom no longer providing the extra life, Needs of the Many, I think, has become a must-have card in somebody's deck. You probably only need 1 copy of it, I would say, in your team composition, but there's so many cards that synergize or trigger off of having an extra life. Inspiring Sacrifice, or Avenge the Fallen. Medical Professional is going to be one of the more reliable cards for your team to recover trauma with, and having the extra life synergize with Needs of the Many. Because now that no one responds, in Nightmare mode, not having a life, I didn't think was a big deal, because if you ended up dying, you would respawn like 2 minutes into the mission. Like the respawns for Back for Blood are actually rather consistent. They're based off of triggers on how deep someone's gone into the mission. So long as no one's gone extra far ahead, hitting all the triggers, chances are if you die, you'll respawn like in the next section of the map, like a minute or two away. But now with no respawns, having all 4 players for as long as possible is going to be super important. And also having somebody downed in the middle of a fight as opposed to dead, because at least when they're downed, they can still swing their bat if they're the melee character, and that's a really powerful effect for a melee character because a temporary health restores their downed health, as well as Vanguard still applies to your team when you're down as a melee character. A lot of players like to run 2 as 1. So being downed with that card means that your primary weapon is your downed weapon, and you can still be a significant source of DPS. So there's a lot of value now. There's always been good value in having an extra life, but now in no hope mode, with no extra lives and no respawns, having your team alive as long as possible in no hope mode is super essential. And there's so much potential now for overhealing and extra health and things like that. I think Needs of the Many is sort of like this baseline foundation that you're going to want for a lot of different support wombo combos, as well as just the general value of just having players live for longer throughout a mission. Poultice. Now, when it comes to bang for your buck healing, Poultice is number 1. I've always loved Poultice. Poultice has always been like top 1, top 2 healing cards. When it comes to getting more health out of your accessory, Poultice has been top 1, top 2. Like, it's Poultice or EMT bag, and there hasn't really been anything else for forever, right? The reason why Poultice is so important is because for one, it doubles the healing of your bandages, right? 25 plus 20. All right, it's not double, right? It's 80%. Poultice is a 80% healing efficiency increase to your bandages. Poultice is almost 50% healing efficiency increase to your medkits. So an EMT bag has an extra 5 points of health on Poultice. But also Poultice turns your pain pills basically into bandages, right? So now with Poultice, no matter what you have, you're always going to be healing extra health. Always, always, always. It's also just, when it comes to EMT bag, the next best healing efficiency item is Poultice. And even though it's not technically healing efficiency, it's the most bulk health that you can get. There are some other wombo combos where Poultice falls off a little bit because it doesn't affect like group therapy, but healing efficiency does, and I understand that. Another new interesting interaction, though, for Poultice that I think puts it over the edge is Overheal. If you have Overheal and Poultice, and I know Overheal's not on this deck because it's not... Overheal's a sort of a niche thing here, but it's a nice card. It's a close second, right? But Poultice synergizes with Overheal. Overheal is the effect where excess healing done to a character is turned into temporary health. And Poultice counts towards that temporary health. In fact, if you have temporary health, Poultice activated, and Overheal, you don't lose temporary health. Your temporary health, this should technically be declining every 1.75 seconds, stays stagnant because of the heal over time. The heal over time will basically maintain your current amount of temporary health. Which means that even if you get max bolstered health, you're at total max temporary health, you can't have any more health even in the temporary bolstered health area, but Poultice is triggered, you will still get the full value out of Poultice regardless of what your max bolstered health is, because the Poultice will translate into temporary health slowly over time, forcing your temporary health to basically stay stagnant. It was kind of a cool interaction. So doubles bandages, almost halves medkits. It will heal with Overheal, keeping your temporary health up, and it turns pain pills into bandages. I think Poultice is pretty much a must include for all of the support characters, right? So whoever your support character is, somebody in your team composition should be running Needs of the Many, and whoever's going to be bandaging people up should be running Poultice. Poultice also triggers off of Doc's field bandages, her passive heals, which is great as well. So just so much value out of Poultice. Highly recommend it. If you haven't been using this card, cut a card out, put Poultice in. Get rid of your antibiotic ointment. Get rid of it. Put Poultice in instead. Medical professional. Medical Professional. Now there are, I do want to say like Fresh Bandage is a nice close second. I've actually really enjoyed this card. Sort of the silly thing though about support cards in general is that the better your team is, the less valuable support cards become because you're taking less damage overall. Fresh Bandage is sort of that amplified in that it takes up a card slot. It's for you individually, but if you're doing fine, you'll get literally no value out of Fresh Bandage. If one player on your team is a support character, usually at least one player needs a couple of healing here and there, right? Even if it's not you. If it's not you who needs extra healing, it's not your card slot being taken up, it's the support card slots who are being wasted, right? And they're being wasted on you because you're doing fine. Fresh Bandage sort of takes your card slot, and it's useless if you're doing good. With that being said, Fresh Bandage again would require that we have maybe 4 card slots taken up by it, because each player would need it. With that being said then, Medical Professional becomes our most bang for our buck trauma recovery for the entire team. It does require first aid kits or defibrillators, but if you're with a smart team composition and enough copper, you can easily just buy a couple of med kits here and there, and then all the small heals should hopefully be picked up by having Support Scavenger, because why aren't you running Support Scavenger? It's an incredible card. Incredible card, right? Not only that, Medical Professional again synergizes with Needs of the Many. So if Needs of the Many is going to be a must-have card, which I believe it is, Medical Professional also becomes a must-have card because the wombo combo between having a life economy, of being able to restore and regenerate extra lives over the course of a mission, is going to hopefully make your team immortal. But again, just all the other cards that sort of like Needs of the Many and Medical Professional become the super solid foundation of just reliable healing over the course of missions, trauma recovery, as well as synergizing with all these other cards that benefit from players being downed or just being healed or restored in general. So great card, the best trauma recovery card, and of course only one player needs to run this card. And now the entire team has access to basically half a cabinet's worth of trauma recovery, which of course gets better as your medkits get improved as well. Next is Admin Reload. Not every player on your team needs to have Admin Reload, but for the most part, every player on your team could have Admin Reload. This card really excels only during Horde events, right? This card only excels when you have need to be constantly shooting, which is be dealing with mutations or dealing with a long Horde event. That being said, you're going to be doing that a lot in no hope mode. So the idea is that you've basically increased your character's DPS in a sense, where you have the ability to pretty much be shooting almost all the time. For the most part, swapping a weapon is faster than reloading it. There might be some circumstances where that's not true, depending on the weapons, but for the most part, Admin Reload is going to be increasing your damage overall. The reason why this card is so important is that what this card does is so unique that it can sort of be this, again, like this foundation that so many other cards benefit from. You might be wanting to stack damage cards and get extra bullet damage and your glass cannon and all this other stuff, right? But there's actually quite a few cards that give you bonus damage. But there's only one Admin Reload that allows you to basically keep shooting constantly no matter what. And then you can usually pick up this card and get extra damage along the way with all the card boxes that you'll find. In addition to that, there's this other cards that combo with it, like Power Swap, and Shredder goes really well with this card. And it's just, this card was going to provide you with reliable DPS. And when things are looking at their grimace and you have need to shoot all the time, this weapon will give you as much opportunity as possible to push back the Horde, or stumble a Ridden, or contribute damage to a boss more quickly because you have a Horde timer on your back and things like that. So Admin Reload, I think, is just can easily fit into every deck, and it's just one card. In fact, some cards might just run Admin Reload only as their only damage card. I think that's totally viable, and you just plan to get other damage cards later on. But I think Admin Reload, I wasn't a believer before, but now I'm a believer. Admin Reload is just like borderline must include in every single deck. Maybe under some extenuous circumstances you can cut this card out, but for the most part, one card does so much for your DPS, it's really insane. That's just Shredder. When it comes to damage cards in general, most of them are about the same. There are some nuances between them that might make one better over the other, but only in maybe some certain circumstances. Shredder, though, is just straight up flat damage, and it's a team effect, right? The target receives 15% more damage, which means your entire team who's focus firing the target will be dealing an additional 15% damage. Net gain of damage of what, 45%? 45%? No, what is it? 60%? What is it? 15, 30, 45, 15, 30, 45, 60. Yeah, math. A net gain of 60% damage for your team, in theory, right? Because your entire team is going to be doing an extra 15% damage to the target. So for one card, there's no other card in the game other than Marked for Death, which is 5% less per teammate. That comes close to providing as much damage boost to your team. Your entire team will benefit from this card. A tremendous amount of potential bonus damage, essentially. And it's also great for bosses, right? Like, the more health the target has, the more valuable Shredder is, because you'll be shooting more bullets over time into that target, so you'll get more and more value out of that 15%. So I think Shredder is a must include as far as at least one player on your team should have it. I'm not 100% sure if Shredder stacks, but I mean, really, you just need one of them. You just need one of them. Shredder's so good; it's just a bonus team effect for your team's damage overall. Combat training. Combat training is sort of like offensive scavenger was holding the place for the scavenger cards, the healer support scavenger. Combat training sort of holding the place here for other cards like Silver Bullets or maybe Patient Hunter. Damage is king for the most part, right? Damage is king in the Back for Blood meta. You can't die if you blow everything up before it can get to you first, right? The reason why I have combat training here is simply because Stumble. I want to talk about Stumble. Stumble is super duper important. Stumble is critical to success. Stumble will mean if you can stumble reliably, Reeker variants and down into stingers, that'll take a huge strain off of your grenade economy, your grenade demands, essentially. And if you can do that reliably and comfortably at a good distance, pretty much Reekers become a non-issue. Stingers become a non-issue. The only thing you need to worry about is hardened tall boys. And the reason why I have combat training in particular is that the way the math works out with combat training versus like Silver Bullets is that the lower the damage of the weapon, the more value that 1% stumble damage is. If you're like, example, I did the math on a green AK, right? No attachments, green AK. Combat training will add about 12% stumble percentage to your green AK. Silver Bullets will add about 11% stumble bonus to your green AK. And as the damage of the weapon goes up, the additional damage becomes more valuable as far as the excuse me. As the individual bullet damage goes up, the value of the bonus is more significant as far as it affecting stumble chance or stumble damage in general. So, with that being said, feel free to replace combat training with Silver Bullets or Patient Hunter. I just wanted to have it as a placeholder to remind myself to speak specifically about stumble damage because this is super important. There are some weapons like Pestilence, because it has super low bullet damage. It would benefit more from combat training as far as its ability to stumble than it would Silver Bullets. But I just wanted to put this down here as a universal card and a universal concept that no matter what weapon you're using for the most part, always going to benefit from combat training, always going to benefit from Silver Bullets. But just keep in mind that depending on its bullet damage, you may want a different damage card in general. There's a ton of them. Ton of great bullet damage cards. And with damage being king, for the most part, unless somebody's deck has got some sort of weird, crazy wombo combo, but everyone's deck in a team composition should have some extra damage in it, one way or another. And if you're not sure what card to put in, you just want to sort of increase your stumble chance, though, put in combat training. Put in combat training, but for the most part, combat training can actually be replaced by any damage card in general. It's good though, right? Okay, next is Run Like Hell. And Run Like Hell is a card that, when it comes to team composition, begins to fall off a little bit. But I think these cards are so important for solo no hope mode. The reason why I have Run Like Hell here specifically is that I believe that we get the most bang for our buck for the least amount of drawback. The least amount of drawback. There are a lot of circumstances where you're going to hate having this minus 40% sprint efficiency, and you sort of end up wanting other stamina cards to compensate for it in some way or another. But the important thing about Run Like Hell is that the 15% sprint speed is just sort of barely enough to keep pace with the blitzing zombies. Those super fast sprinting zombies, if you're having issues with them, if they're overtaking you, right? If you react at a normal human reaction time to a horde event being called, right? You're out of position, a horde event is called, and blitzing zombies are spawning in around you. Run Like Hell will give you enough sprint speed to get to a comfortable corner without getting overwhelmed most of the time. And the blitzing zombies, I think, are just slightly faster than us with Run Like Hell. But if you got some distance between you and the zombie only barely gains on you. You can run easily through your entire stamina bar before a blitzing zombie catches up to you. And so, in the event that you are out of position, you're going to need extra movement speed. And Run Like Hell, I think, is just the easiest card to include without any other extra drawback. You don't have to play around with your sprint efficiency or anything like that, and just have a nice normal stamina bar. In addition to this, though, it's important. I think if you're going to include one mobility card or one stamina card, it should be either Run Like Hell or Mad Dash, because there's so many cards. There's so many cards that give us stamina, not just cards here, but also basic cards, which is going to give you stamina and stamina regen. So I think if you should include at least one movement speed card or sprint speed card, sprint speed card to clarify specifically, because there'll be so much opportunity to get stamina somewhere else. Sort of has pushed stamina cards to the back of the line here, right? Cross Trainers, great card, close second, but there's other ways to get stamina in a round without having to put it into our deck. And so having extra sprint speed, I think, is more important than stamina right now, because you'll just pick up the stamina somewhere else over the course of a campaign. Next is Fire in the Hole. I believe Fire in a Hole is a must-include in solo no-hope mode. In solo no-hope mode, where you're going to be relying on yourself to throw things and do everything yourself, and potentially have to solo speed clutch submissions because your bots died to Cost of Avarice. Fire in the Hole generates so much health, right? If you are digging this deck and you're believing in the sort of extra accessory foundation here, where you got so many extra throwables, we're talking about generating hundreds, literally hundreds of extra temporary health per mission. In solo mode, you're easily generating somewhere between 100 and 200 points of temporary health per mission because of how many things you're throwing over the course of the mission. In a team composition, this card might fall off a little bit because people are throwing things are being thrown spread out across the team. You personally are not always getting access to all of the extra Pinata generated throwables or offensive scavenger throwables, right? But even if you're not throwing all the stuff, maybe you only end up throwing the 3 grenades that you have. That's an extra 60 points of temporary health. 60. And usually you're throwing grenades in sketchy situations. Even if you're throwing the grenade at your feet, that extra temporary health, and with Bomb Squad, the temporary health will eat up that self-inflicted damage. Like, you have the ability to just throw a grenade at your feet, clear the room, and not take any damage from it. It can be a huge get-out-of-jail-free card. So I think Fire in the Hole is just, somebody in your team should probably have a copy of it or two, you know. But in solo no-hope mode, absolutely a must-include in your team deck, or in your solo deck, for sure. It's so much health, and it sort of gives us the ability to speed clutch. And if you're not really in a position to speed clutch, but you're getting overwhelmed, throw a grenade at your feet, speedy zoom into a corner, stabilize, right, reestablish yourself, and you're good to go. So Fire in the Hole is this great get-out-of-jail-free card, but also an incredible sustain card. It's going to give you so much health over the course of each mission, especially if you're running sort of the grenade heavy accessory heavy playstyle that I really have come to love and adopt. Not adopt. I created it. I pioneered it. I'm always hubris. Anyways, let me know what you guys think. I understand that there's going to be a lot of close seconds, especially for like combat training. It was sort of I know it was sort of a wishy-washy card to have here as a placeholder, but damage is king. I think it's important to pay homage to said king. In general, let me know what you guys think of these cards. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what your favorite cards are and things like that. Otherwise, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you in the future.